Thank you so much for coming on the channel and to have a chat. Really appreciate it. Appreciate it. Where did you say you are right now? What part of the world are you in?
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much, David, for having me here. It's an honor. I am excited to always talk about space. I am currently located in Strasbourg on the border next to Germany.
Really good. So just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, so I come from North Macedonia. Macedonia is a country in the Balkans. It's a really tiny country. And we don't really have a space exploration program. We don't have that industry. And I just had to go a long journey to come where I am right now. I started off with volunteering, and then one thing led to the other, a few programs in space, and here I am now, currently at Strasbourg.
And you basically just got yourself involved in the space industry because you had an interest.
A bit by bit, you can say that, a bit by bit. So it was a long journey, to be honest. So I started getting interest since 2014, which is 8 years ago,
Yeah.
when I was really young. And I started off at volunteering and participating at various hackathons and events. And then through volunteering, I've started meeting people who could show me how to navigate the waters, because the space exploration is still a bubble, right? So it's closed. It's harsh to navigate the waters if you're first an outsider and you don't have the resources and you're extremely young and you only have curiosity to show. But that's sometimes enough, and sometimes you can do great things even with just curiosity. So I started volunteering in various organizations, one of them being the NASA Space Apps Challenge. So currently I am the local lead of the NASA Space Apps Challenge. That is a hackathon that is annual. It is the biggest hackathon in the world. It is done on various locations throughout the world. So a lot of host locations throughout the cities in Europe and in the US. I am the local lead of the NASA Space Apps Challenge Cleveland at the moment, organizing it at Cleveland, Ohio, the US, where our annual partner is the NASA Glenn Research Center, where we hosted. And then we also secured Mountain View this year, because in COVID times, when it was really challenging and difficult and harsh, we took the challenge and I became the local lead, and it was quite successful. So currently I am doing it in both Cleveland and Mountain View. It is rather a challenge, especially when you have to do your masters as well as do something as extreme as organizing an event that, has to cater to a lot of people that have a lot of needs. So it's been eventful. It's been challenging.
What actually happens at the events? What do you do?
So the NASA Space Apps Challenge is a hackathon where NASA releases open and public data. There's a lot of data, for example, obtained by satellites, which can be further on worked on. People can make either apps or create interesting solutions based on 3D printing. There's a lot of divisions within the hackathon. There's usually annually 20 to 30 divisions or lines where you can hack. So there's challenges within the hackathon that are different, from 3D printing to design to coding to data handling. So you can be creative. You can design a spacesuit or a tool or an app that's gonna cater towards needs that we have on Earth, like floods or fires or some kind of catastrophe, or design a novel tool that can track objects or just meteorites or asteroids or challenges field or the moon or Mars. So there's a lot, and it's usually different every year. So to be fair, in the hackathon, we don't know them until right about the release date of the hackathon. The 1st and 2nd of October is this year. So we don't know what specific challenges there are gonna be. We can just know from previous years what was there and what existed, but we're still having no clue this year. It's usually released a bit earlier before the start date, so people can be aware of what they're gonna solve or where they can apply. However, for the fairness, we don't know the exact.
And how many people get involved in these hackathons?
To be honest, that depends on the local lead. So the local lead is usually the organizer of the event per location. For example, I am for Cleveland and also Mountain View as a location. So we gather our team, and based on what we can do marketing wise and I guess, influence-wise or team-wise, how fit we are to actually do it. We can gather as many people as we want. That also depends on the sponsorship companies that are involved. And that depends on the location. If you are in the research center or any kind of company, a startup or a venue or a school or a university, and the capacity of that venue. So usually a good challenge, according to myself, according to me, is when you have around, like, I guess 100 or 150 people. I think it's a good number to have, where you can have a good organization and good companies on board, but when everybody is not overwhelmed. So that's a good number. But we did have locations around the globe with 300, 400 participants, or we'd had even smaller groups of 20, 10, 30 people. So that depends on the organizing team and the local lead and the capacity and the experience they have. But I guess the more the merrier. Definitely everybody's welcome, and there is space for everyone. And this year's message is, I guess, there's always room for one more. So inclusivity is a big one this year.
Yeah, okay, very good. And did you, as the local lead, do you assemble the team and say we need a few more engineers, or we need some artists, we need this, we need that, or do you just let everybody come together and then figure it out as a team when the actual hackathon starts?
So, as a local lead, you first have to set your own organizing team. That's gonna be the location's organizing team. So you do want a representative of each field, I guess. You do need a good designer, you need a good photographer and a videographer for the event. You also need engineers to tell you which hackathon needs they need to solve. For example, if we need mentors, an engineer would know the proper mentors. If we need judges for the event, somebody else would be responsible for finding those judges. In my location, because so far it is the only location that is collaborating with a NASA research center, NASA Glenn Research Center, we also need to cater towards the needs of the center in particular. For example, the collaboration has to be done with people that are gonna probably judge from Glenn, or mentors that are gonna be civil servants and attend to the needs of the participants. We even have astronauts on board often, so that's really exciting.
Yeah, it sounds really good. Is this the first one that you've been the lead?
No, I've been the lead since COVID hit, so I'm reoccurring lead right now.
Okay, good. Do you pass it on to somebody after this, or will you get the chance to keep doing it?
So I do want to keep doing it until I have the time, because it's a lot of commitment and devotion. And when you're juggling two locations, it's a struggle. So currently I am trying to find my co-leads to help me, so I can train them and I can have a higher up, if you want, or if you will. Like I started as a participant, then as a mentor, then as a judge, then as a core team member, and then as a lead. And now I'm trying to move a bit beyond that, or either develop new locations that have never been developed before based on the partnerships that I can see happening at Cleveland, and copy that model somewhere else, because it's fruitful for the community. But for now, for this year and for the several, I guess, next months, I think of continuing being the local.
Being the lead. Okay, very good. Is there an age range that you're looking for people to get involved?
No, actually, everybody can join. You can join me too if you want. So you're more than welcome to come.
Very good. How did you end up being in Cleveland and Mountain View if you're in Strasbourg?
Oh, before coming to Strasbourg, I was actually in the US. So I have done a lot of exchange programs in my life, and some of them are educational, some of them were conferences, some of them were just professional. However, I went to the US first when I was at Kent State. I was on the Global Europe program. That's a program that gets you to experience the US as a foreign student. So I was at Kent State, which is in Ohio, and then I ended up getting involved with the Space Ups Challenge in Cleveland. And that's how I got on board with the organizing team. And one thing led to the other, and that's how I obtained the location. In Mountain View, I've been several times. I usually go on conferences, so because I have a community there, and because the Space Ups Challenge was not as prevalent there and not reoccurring, I know some of the leads that did lead it last year and couldn't do it this year, for example. So I did get in touch and I obtained dislocation, and I hope it's gonna become a staple with my involvement. I'm actually trying to relocate myself to Mountain View because I do see myself in Silicon Valley, but we'll see. Currently, I am doing the Masters of Space Studies in Strasbourg, France,
Yep.
at the International Space University because I wanted to experience Europe's education for a year. But before that, I completed the Commercial Space Studies program at the Florida Tech US.
Yeah, very good. So when you were a kid, were you a sci-fi nerd? Was that a thing?
When I was young, I came from a really modest upbringing. It was really humble, and we didn't have a lot. I also grew up with a disabled sister, and of course, my dad was into the geeky sides of sci-fi, so I did grew up loving sci-fi. And I think for a lot of kids who like that, if they do have the means, they pursue STEM or space education. But for those who are rather underprivileged and have to, I guess, allocate the funds of the family towards the needs of the disabled child, if you don't have a good healthcare system in the country, if it's corrupted, if you're a third world country that's still into development, you don't have all the resources appropriate for following your true passions. And especially for young kids who grew up loving sci-fi or space exploration or any sort of like a bit more prestigious industry slash career, because space is known to be prestigious. It's a bit challenging to make that happen if you are coming from a country that doesn't have as big of a sector as a spacefaring.
Yeah, for sure. Well done for you for following your passion so far. So,
It's been a lot, a long journey.
we're talking a long journey. Do you actually expect to get into space? Is that something that you're looking to do? Physically into space?
Oh, uh, I have been accepted to one analog mission before. However, I had to choose between my two programs now. I was applying to several things that interest me, actually, and Florida Tech and the Commercial Space Studies program was one of them, and also the International Space University Masters of Space Studies was the other one. So the third one was one analog mission that I liked. I got in, but I just couldn't negotiate being into going on the mission because you needed to allocate time and resources, and it wasn't on the route of the programs that I had to go education wise. So I had to sit down and I had to make a logical decision of, can this analog mission wait, and do I pursue the education first? Because coming from where I come from and having the experiences that I had makes you doubt yourself, makes you have this imposter syndrome. So I just applied because I wanted to, but I never thought I'm just gonna get into anything. I didn't think I'm gonna get accepted, and I got accepted to everything, and then the struggle was to decide where. And I always seem to do this. I always seem to think that I am not good enough and that I'm not gonna get in, and I just do overwhelming amount of applications in a high number, and then you end up with a lot of slots for you to make those hard decisions towards. Like, it's impossible to manage it because time is so limited, and you can only do one. So that was my path. But to get back to the point, yes, if I was ready then, I think I could be ready now.
Yeah. Well,
Would you?
You've got time. There's plenty of time.
I
You know.
I try.
That's no worries. So would you go? I'll answer your question in a minute, but let me finish asking you the question. What would you do? Would you go an afternoon trip into space, maybe Blue Origin or Virgin Galactic or something like that, or would you go for a week away on the moon, or do you fancy a 3 or 4 year voyage out to Mars?
If I'm being realistic, since I am not born a US citizen, or I am not born in a other nation that has a space program that can bear humans to space, that can lead humans to space, I don't think I can have a chance of actually applying and getting in because of those reasons. However, because I guess the commercial space now is having inclusivity for all, I think because of my experiences so far, and because of that being inclusive and for all, I think I would be biased and I would answer I'd prefer a commercial way forward, just because it's making things a bit more easier if you think about it a bit. I think for now, as of now, it's a bit impossible to just pave a way towards being a full-time astronaut if you're not from a country that can enable you that. But I think private space exploration and private astronauts are promising right now, and it's something I look forward. And actually, a lot of my friends that I know are either flying or gonna fly or excited about it or trying to be analog astronauts. So I think we're all on that road. And I think we're contributing to make it more popular and more relevant. And I think that's really nice because it does feel like everyone can fit.
Yeah.
Even you,
Yeah.
even me.
Yeah. And you see, I'm 58 years old, but I expect to live to 108. I expect my children.
Why that number?
Actually, I'll tell you, I was 54. It was my birthday when I was 54, and I was in a group of business people, and I said, I'm about halfway. So therefore, I just doubled it and went 108. But and
Okay.
I genuinely believe I'll live to 108. My children, who are in their early 20s, I think will live to 120, 150. My grandchildren that haven't been born yet, I think 150, 180, 200 years old. I think that's entirely possible in the time frames of what's happening in medical science. So if you think about it within that time frame, so maybe in the next 10, 20 years, it might be challenging to become an astronaut. But in the next 50 years, it might be that they're actually looking for people to get on an aircraft and go to Mars, to settle, because they're not really coming back. In 100 years' time, we might be having commuter trips to Mars. So if you extend the time frame, and you will live, at your age, you will live to be a lot older than I will live at my age. So there's plenty of time to get into settler programs. If you were going to go and settle the moon, who would you send to settle the moon? Well, you'd send all the people who are analog astronauts on Earth. You wouldn't necessarily send the pilots and the people who were the real astronauts. If you wanted to send 50 people to the moon and go and settle it, you'd start with your analog astronauts, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that makes sense.
That would be the logical place to start. If you wanted to colonize Mars in 50, 100 years' time, again, you'd start with the people who have been through that sort of experience, and most of that's going to be analog, not real. There will be very few flight engineer astronauts, but Elon's going to fill his Starship with 100 people. Well, they're not all going to have degrees in astrophysics. There'll be plenty of farmers required on Mars.
Yeah, and you said something about making space more plausible for the future generations, but I think that every bit counts for making it exciting today. And even podcasts like yours help a lot, although this is your first season. First of all, congratulations on that, but it does help. I think every bit counts, and the more we hype space, the more it's gonna be relevant. And everywhere, it just in the media, in the pop culture, everywhere else, and I see a lot of slots happening, and I do want to see this trend. But yeah, definitely if you want to colonize another planet, a go-to can be analog astronauts. I completely agree, and we'll see. I aspire to become one, and we'll see where I get and if I find the time to actually pursue that, because the space industry is harsh. It's a lot of devotion, and translating from just an engineer towards a space engineer, it's been a journey.
Yeah, there's a lot of different skills required in the space industry as it grows. So definitely 100% we need engineers and rocket scientists. Of course you need rocket scientists, but you also need policymakers. You also need people who are skilled at manufacturing. You know,
architecture.
Exactly. So it's not just the engineers that we require. We've got to solve all these problems with all the different skill sets. So, and I agree with you, the more people that become aware of the opportunities in the space industry, the more people that will come in. I mean, apart from your cohort of friends who are involved with you in the space industry, do you find that the other people, what do they think about space? Are they even thinking about?
I think there are. I think we just don't give them enough space to fit in. I know a lot of people who don't know a lot, but they do have the hype and they want to get more information and know more. And one way that we can breach that bubble is by giving them a shot. And when I give those artists, per se, a terrific host for the NASA Space Ups Challenge in Cleveland and Mountain View, a host, his name is David, and he is an artist. He is a musician and also an actor. And I find it really interesting that when people like him of his non-engineering background have interest, we do dismiss them because they're not in that field that we are. And we shouldn't, because honestly, from all of my circle, from all of my engineering friends, from all of my analog friends, he is the sole person who can give me material or resources for me to watch that I have not watched before. And regarding space exploration, they are relevant and they are new and meaningful, and that they can enrich my experiences. And I often set him as an example of what those people can do. He is first and foremost a great speaker. He has a beautiful presence. And I do learn a lot from people like him. And if we don't give those people a shot, we're closing our own doors, I believe. Because the more we make it exclusive and the more we make it, I guess, only for a select few, only for some type of an elite, it's damaging to us, because other things are gonna go forward in the media that includes the masses more and better, and they're gonna benefit from it. So I really think that, for example, the motto of the NASA Space Up Challenge this year is "There's always room for one more," because we do want to include all of the designers and everything. And if you can see throughout my years, because I'm also different and more expressive throughout my hair or makeup, or I don't know, I like photography or cosplay, because I'm different like that, I always sort of paved my way towards the people who are more artsy and different and gave them a shot, because it's really valuable when they create in their field, but it also has a space theme. And you can see that in my impact as a local lead. We always emphasize that we also need designers, we also need artists, we also need creative people, we need lawyers, and my team has a lawyer, it has an artist, and I always find them a proper slot. And if you compare my designs towards to designs of the other locations, you'll see that mine are a bit more out there, a bit more artsy, and then they're more captivating. And even sometimes without marketing, just because the design is captivating or everything is well done, because a proper team member has a proper role, it's not a one-man show, everybody has his own task, it's a bit more organized, and people aim towards my location, which also makes it successful. So I do believe that we need to renew space and refurbish it with people who can actually do that, who can paint it like that. So I think they're really key.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think we've got a long way to go, and I empathise with what you're saying, publicising opportunities and things coming in. I think that'll happen. I think that'll happen over time. We can accelerate it, and when you think about probably the most influential person on space, I'm going to argue Gene Roddenberry from Star Trek, that wrote Star. I would say he's probably the most influential space person ever. Most people would probably say JF Kennedy or Neil Armstrong, but actually more people think about space because of the art and the literature about it than actually know the science. I do think the privateers are doing a great job in making space exciting and interesting at the moment, and that'll help. But it's just a bit of time to bring more and more people into the space industry and find a role. So really,
That's definitely true. Yeah, both me and my dad grew up watching Star Trek and Star Wars, so I think my love for space doesn't come from following a space program, because my country did not have those heroes that I was supposed to look up to. It didn't have the rockets that I was supposed to look up to. Even in education, that was a bit scarce. We didn't really cover satellites since a young age, or we didn't really cover a lot in depth of the space exploration. We just have some chapters in some books. However, watching those shows did make me excited about them, and it did make me more, I don't know, influenced and become more geekier or tech oriented, so I could pursue what I thought is cool for me.
Excellent. Good. So thank you so much for spending a bit of time chatting to me. This is what I like to do, is just get to know people, get to understand what you're doing. And it's beautiful to find out all the different things that people are doing, the different programs. So I'd love to keep in contact with you. I'll be delighted to see your, when you do the challenge, the footage that comes from it, the artwork that comes from it. Maybe some sculptures get made of it, as well as the hacks and the stuff that comes out from the challenges. So please do keep me informed of what's going on. And it was really great.
That would be
Yeah, it's
interesting.
really great chatting with you.
That would be interesting. I think I'm big on 3D printing, and currently I am doing a individual research project that's gonna be hopefully showcased at the International Astronautical Federation, because I got elected as an emerging space leader there. And my research is between ISU and ECM, both schools here in Strasbourg, and I'm doing 3D solar printing. So I think on a lot of hackathons in the Space Apps Challenge, we did have the notion of 3D printing, and I can also get people to know 3D solar printing. But if we can optimize those technologies, and if we can make them more artsy, of course sculptures could potentially be made, or anything similar to an art
So what do you
form.
mean by 3D solar printing? I understand those two words, 3D and solar, but what do you mean by the connection?
So we actually have a 3D printer that is made out of a Fresnel lens. That is a lens that focuses
Yeah.
the light, and it has solar panels to actually get sunlight, so it operates. And we are having that technology optimized. It's already pre-existing. It's already made several times and proven through people like Markus Kaiser, who started this trend. He could be the father of 3D solar printing, if you ask me. So we're following that type of technology and developing it and optimizing it, and we are printing with the usage of the sun. So we're printing sand that is rich in silica, or regoliths like a lunar regolith or Martian regolith that could potentially have a space usage as well. So when the sand or the materials that we're printing are rich in silica and basalts, they can have a melting point and they can form objects. So for Earth, if you want to have an impact on Earth, we can always use it in hot deserts when there's a lot of sun but not a lot of resources, where you can print bricks, for example, for habitats, or some remote regions where you can print something where you need aid. But it's also beautiful, and if it could be made more optimized, I guess, and if it could be made for space, using proper materials that are going to last, and that are going to be durable during spaceflight, you can use it, because our sun is a vast resource throughout the solar system. So it could be used for the moon and for Mars. If we can print on lunar regolith, or similar stimulants, we can find a way to actually implement it on other planets to aid us when we are there, especially if we have a system that doesn't really use human contact. If we make it as optimized enough or as independent enough where the astronauts won't have to remove the prints or be there to monitor it 24/7. And if we, for example, analyze the moon, and if we go to the peak spots, because the moon has some spots who are always exposed to sunlight based on what experts have told me, then if we target those spots, and if we have the proper material that's gonna be exported from somewhere, then maybe we can have a continuous process of printing, so we can use it for making better structures that are gonna aid humankind in the future. I think it's still premature to develop it right now, but I don't think it's that far-fetched.
No. So you're harnessing both the solar power through solar arrays in order to power the mechanism, but you're also using the energy of the sun through the Fresnel lens to melt the core material. And you
Wow, that's correct.
Yeah.
You picked it
Okay.
up. Well
Got it.
done. Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
Great
exactly
idea.
it.
And this is an engineering project that you're involved with?
Yes, it is. It's been here present at the International Space University through the collaboration with ECOM for several years. And we are optimizing it enough because it's several generations of working on it from design to actual print. So we are really close to print, but we want to make sure that everything is okay and everything is assembled properly. So we are in the final phases, and hopefully this summer we're gonna have some test results and that are going to be printed and later on, which will have characterization of materials so we can see what's happening behind and what's the chemistry behind that. So wish me luck for this summer because I'll need it. The weather here is good. It is definitely of benefit because we have a lot of sun and it's really hot outside, so no clouds, and we have that favor. We're just needing to finish this and create the first prints, and I think if we achieve that, it's going to be a big deal.
Sounds fantastic. Really look forward to hearing about how you got on. Keep me updated.
Yep. If you're by any chance in Paris this September on the International Astronautical Federation, you can see it there. Hopefully, I might have my paper with promising results, hopefully, fingers crossed. So if you're coming, I'll be the emerging space leader there. I would love to show you around and tell you all about my work.
I am planning. I haven't yet made the arrangements, but I am planning on coming to Paris.
I might meet you in person. Okay.
Look
Fair enough.
to it.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
Take care.